We're sitting in Mumbai. Certainly, this morning, it would be impertinent of me to repeat what has been so brilliantly said by a variety of the best speakers in the nation, people who really have been thoughtful, knowledgeable, and lend a perspective which I cannot compete with. I hope to discuss the ideological roots of terrorism, and particularly the ideological roots of terrorism exported by Pakistan. But on a practical level, since we are in Mumbai, and we have to remember the last great incident of this, what our president said, called a curse, and I would have called something worse. Two things. One, I'm amazed. One of the extraordinary maturity of the Mumbai people and the Indian people. In what? One of the great reasons, one of the great motives of the terrorist is to provoke Hindu-Muslim riots. Never forget that. This is the collateral benefit he seeks to get. And each time the people of India and the people of Mumbai have defeated terrorists by not it is an amazing, it is something that I assert and reassert. I said, take this. There in Pakistan, if a bomb goes off, Shias and Sunnis go around massacring each other. One of the great stories of success stories of our nation. One of my books, you were kind enough to say, although by the way, to those who introduced me, I really do want to know at what age in life does one become a veteran? There must be some moment when you suddenly slip from young and transferred. I know we all want to feel young, so if you can remove the sentence from my... And now let's come to the sad part of the story. Do you think that the events that happened in Mumbai happened without collusion of people in Mumbai? Almost impossible. Almost impossible. Who are these people? You can find the usual suspects within crime. Let me suggest to you that all of us sitting here, many of us sitting here, are also in collusion with those events. How? Do you think that those ships which came from Karachi and brought arms and Kasab and the terrorists have stopped coming? Do you really think they've stopped coming? Do you think you can get drugs in Goa which have come from Afghanistan? Who brings it? Aladdin's flying carpet? Every day those ships land on the shores of India. And you who in the evening party with drugs at every function, private, at public functions, including sports functions, are colluding with the criminal terrorist nexus which has brought this reality to our shores. I had to get this because you know it is true, we know it is true, it is time to acknowledge it. Another aspect of Mumbai which has always worried me. There are many ways of looking at this problem from the perspective of the terrorists, from the perspective of those who are challenging, fighting terrorism, from the perspective of the political class. Why don't we spend just a minute or two thinking of it from the perspective of the victim? I want to, if I can be personal, narrate a story. This was in 2002, 2003 maybe, but I was in the most important place in the world, it's called the White House. And at that moment, it was, the American president was a great intellectual, George Bush. And it somehow fell, because these things happen by lottery, frankly. It somehow fell on me to ask a question at a, you were limited to 2 questions or something. And it fell upon me to ask a question. And as you know, that was a time when one was, and I asked, because I knew something for a fact from a little association in governance, that there was a moment in the presidency of George Bush the Elder at which America came very close, Shamal I think will pay me out, came very close to declaring Pakistan a terrorist state. And at the last minute, because of strategic imperatives, George Bush the Elder did not do so. And I asked the younger Bush, I said, answer one question. When terrorists attack Twin Towers in New York, you send your Air Force and your armies 9,000, 10,000, God knows how many miles away, bomb the hell out of a nation, destroy a nation's government, pummel it to bits as part of your retribution, which I find explainable, I find explicable. I don't criticize it. I can understand where you're coming from. I can understand the pain that you're feeling for New York. But when the parliament is blown up, when the assembly is blown up, when hundreds of Indians are killed by terrorism sponsored from across the border, you tell us not to cross 10 yards. Why? Why don't we have the same rights and privileges that you extend to yourself of taking action in a separate country? I said, is it because the value of an American life is far more than the value of an Indian life? May I now, with your permission, address a more difficult part of this question? Do we as Indians value lives in the same measure for each one of us? Is the life that was lost at the Taj Mahal and at Oberoi more important than the life that was lost at VT? India has threatened war with Pakistan twice. Once when the parliament was attacked and MPs nearly lost their lives, and the second when Taj and Oberoi. India didn't react with a threat to go to war with Pakistan when the train was destroyed. Have we become an oligarchy of the elite in which only our lives elicit the strongest responses, but the lives of the poor no longer elicit? We treat them as one of those accidents that come and go. It's a thought that I really want to leave you with. Now, to the ideological roots. Mention has been made of Pakistan. I think Uday was right. Sorry, Mr. Shamal, to disagree, but the jihad did not begin in 1988. Uday was far more right. The very first decision taken by the Pakistan state, the very first decision taken by at a time when there were refugees spilling blood all over, when there were a million things to do, when the state did not have the capacity actually even to establish law and order in their own countries, both countries. At that moment, the very first decision taken by the Jinnah Liaquat Khan, the secular people, government was to declare war on India. That war was not a declaration of official war. It was not a war launched by the Pakistani army. It was the first exercise called jihad, first exercise in the export of terrorists. There were 5,000 terrorists in the first day. There were 5,000 terrorists which came in. What was the Indian response? And when you talk about the reaction of the Indian state, here lies. The Indian response was not to send 5,000 counter-terrorists into Lahore or into any other part. From the very beginning, India made one decision. That is, whatever action would be taken